Hey everyone, if you're passionate about improving and leveling up your gameplay, I've been offering coaching classes for 5 days a week for quite some time, and just seen firsthand how much my students have been improving across all different elo brackets. How it works is you'll come to a class with a VOD you like reviewed, and I'm going to help you with your early game, your mid game, or anything you feel like needs improving. And if you're unsure, then I'm going to steer you in the right direction by setting clear learning objectives. Link's going to be in the description, I hope to see you there, but if not, then enjoy the video. Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to be breaking down and reviewing the gameplay and setups from 3 of the best Nasus one tricks in solo queue. It's about time I made a bit of content for those Nasus enjoyers out there in the audience. So today we're going to be breaking down how these players are having so much success in high elo solo queue despite Nasus often struggling in the early game. So if that sounds good to you, then let's get it started. First up, we have the runes, and unfortunately for Nasus runes in high elo games, there is very little variety. The 3 Nasus mains we're watching today, and most of them are general to be honest, they all take phase rush every game no matter what. Now there are some exceptions, there are one tricks who won't do that, but I'd say this is definitely the strongest page on Nasus in the majority of your games, so I do recommend it. The sorcery tree also feels really good, Mana Flow, Transcendent Scorch, all great runes on Nasus, and phase rush really helps make up for your lack of sticking power and mobility. Can help you disengage very strong melee champs and stick onto range champs. Really good rune on this champion. And as for your secondary runes, I do recommend Inspiration, where you go Cookies and Cosmic Insight, but you can swap out Cosmic for Approach Velocity depending on your matchup. And I do recommend Approach, especially versus range champions like Vayne and Quinn. It'll give you a lot of value when you pop your W, you can run towards them quite quickly. But when you verse a melee champion, where approach velocity doesn't feel that impactful, where they're probably going to fight you anyway, having that reduced ghost and TP cooldown is going to be more valuable, so I do recommend Cosmic Insight in that case. Now, as for our 3 rune shards down the bottom, they're probably where you're going to have the most variety, where ability haste does feel quite good. On this champion, Q and E cooldown, you can't go wrong, and also the scaling HP, you're not going to be trying to win your lane 1 to 5 anyway, so just taking HP scaling runes is going to feel better in a lot of matchups. However, there is tech you can do with double adaptive force, where at level 5, with 3 points in E and Doran's ring start, your E will actually one-shot the caster minion, so that could be really good in matchups where you might feel it's quite tricky to get a recall off, where it's quite tough, or in matchups where they spike really hard at level 6, because you don't want to walk up to the wave when you're both level 5, they're pushing, they're going to get 6 first, but if you can walk up, drop 1E, get all those casters down, melee to half HP, walk up and one-shot it with that second E, it's going to feel quite good, because nothing feels worse than walking up, eating the whole wave, and all the casters live on 1 HP, and you miss the majority of that CS, so double adaptive force can be really good in difficult matchups, ones that have a lot of all-in threat at 6, champs like Riven or Aatrox that are going to be trying to run you down, can feel quite good. But if you feel like your matchup's not too tricky and you can get away with it, haste and scaling HP, definitely worth the greed. Now, as for our item builds, it's very consistent across all 3 of our Nasus players, but there is an alternative build that I've seen the Korean Nasus players cooking up, so we'll move on to that shortly, but we'll start with our standard build. And you want to go D-ring every game. I have seen the Koreans go D-shield into really tricky range matchups, but I'd advise against it. From what I've seen, Psychopathic Top goes D-ring every game regardless of matchup, and the majority of the playbase, you can definitely win all your lanes with D-ring, or maybe not win, but go even and do well in most of your lanes with D-ring, and it feels good to range matchups too, the extra poke and wave clear, so definitely you don't need to rely on shield on this champion. Now, as for our first item, Triforce, really good on Nasus, but you can delay it for Oblivion Orb into champions with a lot of healing. Champs like Aatrox or Vlad, it can feel quite good. And I will say it does feel better to go Oblivion Orb on Nasus compared to buying Executioners on the majority of AD champs, so it's not a bad pickup for sure. Extra wave clearing damage on your E, never hurt, and of course the healing cut, very valuable into specific champions. You can also delay your Triforce, in fact, from what I've seen, they do it in the majority of their games for tier 2 boots, but prioritize Swifties and cooldown boots over the defensive boots. Only go them if you need them, but if you need them, of course, you have to get them. So for example, Merc Treads, if you need Merc Treads, you're going to be useless if you don't pick them up. So if they have champs like Leona and Lissandra running around, and you don't pick Mercs, you're probably going to be pretty useless, so you need to go them. And same for Tabbies, not as much of an effect as Mercs, but if you verse a lot of auto-attacking AD champs, Tryndamere, Graves, Kindred, topside, of course Tabbies are too good, so you shouldn't avoid them. But Swifty's cooldown boots, very cheap, a lot easier for you to pick up on the hardest part of the lane for you, the early game. So go Swifties into matchups where mobility is very important, so range matchups mainly, and also into champs with a lot of slow. So champs like Olaf, it can feel quite good, but just go cooldown boots into the majority of the melee base and start to get your Q and E spam off because it feels really good to spike, especially if you can get them on your first recall. Now, as for a second item, most of the time it will be a defensive one, and from what I've seen, it will be Frozen Heart most of the time, but you can go Dead Man's or Force of Nature if you need MR or armor, and also mobility. So if they have a lot of ranged champions, especially, and it's really hard for you to get onto them, then the extra mobility from these items will be very valuable. And I have seen, when you're really snowballed and you want to dominate your side lane opponent, Sundered Sky as your damage item, that can be quite good as well. Third item, very similar, just build what you need. I'm not going to go over items twice, but Steerax can be good if you need a bit more damage and tenacity. So maybe you win Swifties or Haste early game, but now you're grouping up a lot more and you feel like you're getting CC'd a lot. Steerax can be a great middle ground between more damage, HP, and also some tenacity. And you can go Juxtra the Protein as a third item. The Korean players really like this one, especially if you've got a mismatch boot with your item. So what I mean by that is if you have Merctreads and Dead Man's Plate, Merctreads Frozen Heart, for example, then it can be quite good. Or Steel Cap's Force of Nature can be good as well, especially if you don't need too much of a certain resist. If you just want to be a little bit of MR, but they just have 1 AP champ, maybe it's Lux, she's chunking a little bit, but you don't want to build a full 3k item for it, Juxtra can be a great third item. And as for your last couple items, it really depends on the game. I would advise going Juxtra the Protein as your final item pretty much every game, especially if you have an armor and an MR item, but you can go Kanik Rukun into games where they have a lot of AP poke. It can be quite good, champs like Hwei running around, that'll be a great pickup for you. Warmogs is also quite good as well. If you are getting poked down in these fights, it's really hard for you to start them off, then Warmogs can be really good, and also Randrins into multiple crit chance champions. If they have a Yone mid, normal ADC, they can be a good pickup, and Abyssal Mask is just nice because it's cheap. So especially if your AP champs on your team, your jungle mid are playing well, then you can pick this up. It's just a nice cheap buy, really easy to get. So I do recommend it, especially if your AP champs are playing well on your team. Now, as for our Korean Nasus players, DK and Doggold, most of the time they do the standard build that we just touched on, but they have gotten lost in the kitchen recently and they have cooked up a tank build. So Iceborne, I definitely understand, that makes sense, but Iceborne into Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver is a pretty terrible item. On Nasus, your E and your ulti have magic damage, so you don't apply it or get the movement speed anyway, so it takes you a long time to get 5 stacks. I don't think that's very useful, but the Iceborne makes sense, especially if you think about the games they're in, where there's a lot of ADCs running around, especially top lane. Most Korean solo queue games in high rank have a Smolder mid or top, Corki mid or top, something like that. A lot of AD carry. So Iceborne makes sense, especially when the enemy jungler is their only AP threat and he's not that damaging. So if they have a solo AP Brand or a Zyra, that's a different story. But when you're up against a solo AP Nidalee, very little damage. So if they have AD carry top, AD mid, like a Yone or another ADC, and then a normal AD bot, then you go Iceborne as your first item. The armor value is insane, and the slow value is also very insane. It's also cheaper than Triforce, so you spike a bit earlier. So it is, I definitely understand the value of going that tank build into really heavy AD range comps. So you can give it a try yourself, but I would advise against Black Cleaver. Again, you can try it. I'm open to be proven wrong, but it seems terrible, and even from watching it, doesn't look very good. Whereas they don't always go it though. They go Iceborne into tank, which makes more sense to me. I spawn into Kanik Rukun or Dead Man's Plate or Force of Nature, depending on the game. Does look a lot better, but Black Cleaver is an option for a damage item, and you do get a lot of haste from these two, so maybe that's the main point behind it, but a haste and HP. And our example 2 for the tank build, you can go Juxtra the Protein as your third or fourth item. In fact, I recommend it. You'll get a lot of bonuses, because if you think about Juxtra, it's still a great item, but when you build Triforce, you're not really getting any value from, they don't really work well together. But if your full build is tank, Iceborne, Kanik Rukun, and Tajuksho, a lot of value from that item. Now, as for our summoner spells, as you can probably see, not going to take too long. Every single game, you're going to be taking TP and Ghost. I haven't seen a single situation where either of our 3 Nasus plays that we're reviewing have deviated from TP and Ghost. And if you just think about it as well, I don't see a situation where Flash will outperform Ghost, Ignite over TP. There's no situation where you'd want to swap out these spells. Definitely the most useful on this champion. Next up, we're going to be covering the laning phase, and we'll start with Psychopathic top. We're named Nasus, and this game he's playing up against a Gangplank. Now, if you're expecting, just because he's a Challenger Nasus player, that he's going to play really volatile, really aggressive, and kill his opponent level 2, you're out of luck. That's not how Nasus functions as a champion. You want to keep your lane very consistent, you want to stay even, get good farm, good CS, and poke your opponent down, and then once you hit your spikes, once you get level 6 with tier 2 boots or Sheen, you can look for a really aggressive play, depending on the matchup, and just scale into the game very nicely. But there is still a lot you can do in the early game. Of course, that'll separate you from the rest of the Nessus players, so we'll see how he does that. So what I really liked about his level 1 is he walked in with the wave. He doesn't know Gangplank could be here or not, walks in and wants the bush straight away. So because you're not going to be pushing on Nasus, you're letting your opponent push. You don't really need a ward for jungle gank. And he's warding because if GP is in here trying to cheese him and get an auto attack onto him with its passive, then the wave will chase him in. Nasus can fight him here, and he'll take extra damage from the minions, and the wave will push back towards Nasus faster. So good preparation already. And then very standard early game here. We can see he holds onto his E, waits for all three of the minions to be low, and then commits his first E of the lane. So 3 out of 3, so far so good. And again, what he did with this barrel here was also quite good. He was baiting Gangplank to hit it, so he pretended to go for it. To be honest, he should have hit it there. He overthought it a little bit. Gangplank doesn't have Q yet, but it's okay. He goes for it, fakes it out again, and this GP had a bit of discipline. He didn't hit the barrel, but he did bait him to use a second barrel, which is a small victory, and then trades autos with him right now. So already off to a decent start. Of course, you're going to take some damage against Gangplank, but you can see straight away, the way he's using his E's, he's making sure he doesn't accidentally get pushed. Because if he's pushing out on a champion that's weaker than his opponent, and he doesn't know where the jungler is, and he uses level 1 ward there, he's going to get destroyed. So he has to use his E very well, and he picks up the CS and he hits Gangplank at the same time, and he only just touches this one minion, so really good use of his E. It's really important that you don't cook your entire wave with your E, with D-ring, especially at later points in the lane. You want to be making sure the wave comes back towards you. So that's exactly what he's doing, but now that Gangplank's hit the wave a lot, he can E and not worry too much about it. So you have to be paying attention to how much damage your opponent is doing to the wave before you decide where you want to be placing your E. Don't just throw it on your opponent whenever you want, because if he's barely touching the wave and you put an E or two onto it, it's going to push out. So we can see here, he's going to get level 3 very shortly, just stacking up Qs when he can, and something that's very consistent across basically every matchup that I've seen is 2 points in E. You don't skill W to level 4, you just want to maximize your E because you only have a limited mana pool, so you want to get as much value as possible from your E spell. And good Q on the cannon there. You can see it's very consistent, trying to fake out going for the barrel, but this GP is also a high elo player, so he's not falling for it, but it's definitely something you can look to implement in your games as well. So just stacking up with Q, trying to poke Gangplank, and he doesn't want to be cooking the whole wave with E. You can see his E hit GP, but didn't touch any minions until now, a little bit of the burn, but his wave is in a great spot, and he's gone level 4, and he's actually ahead in HP. So good start to the lane. Again, hits GP, hits a couple melee minions, but not too bad. As long as the initial burst of the E doesn't hit many minions, you're going to be fine. The tick damage isn't really that impactful, so he's already off to a good start. And now he's pushing the lane out. So here, the good thing about this is if your jungler clears down, which they probably should if they have a Nasus top, they're going to be back top around between 4 and 420, maybe 430. So now the wave's pushing out at a timer when his jungler is here, and not only could he counter gank, he can also gank as well. And I'm not sure if he would have needed the gank here or not. He actually takes a good window here. He fights and gets level 5 during this all-in. So he would have won this, but we don't know if Gangplank would have walked past, of course, if Lilia wasn't here. But still a great position to be in. He's even CS with the Gangplank, wave pushing out as his jungler's coming here. And let's imagine the Gangplank respected Lilia. He would have just got this wave in, based, TP'd back, or walked back to lane with his tier 2 boots or Sheen, and been in a great place. Now, we've watched him play a pretty difficult matchup last game. This time, it's going to be a lot easier for him. He's playing up against a Malphite. And we can already see his approach to this lane is going to be completely different, where previously he walked in, warded the bush level 1, was quite safe and careful with his E, but now it's going to be the opposite. E's the Malphite and the wave at the same time, and now he's also auto-taking the wave. He wants to get prio in this lane. He wants to get pushed to abuse level 2, abuse level 3, poke Malphite under tower, and all the other benefits of getting prio, and also you get to dictate your own recall timing as well. But you'll see no matter what happens, he's prioritizing perfect CS. He's 6 out of 6 right now, even though maybe he could walk up, make it more volatile, hit the Malphite. He prioritizes perfect farm with his auto attacks and his Qs, and I definitely recommend that. Most matchups you should, but especially up against champs like Malphite, Gragas, and stuff like that. If you're playing Nasus, you definitely want to prioritize your stacking and your farm over trading. But because you have your E spell, you can do both. So he's normally trading with E, last hitting with Q, and 12 out of 12 CS if he gets this one. Really good start to the lane. And now, you will see very surely level 3, 2 points in E regardless of your matchup. I don't really see a window where you'd ever go Wither level 3. It costs too much mana unless your opponent is doing something really dumb. They got chunked really hard by minions or something, or took tower shots. Maybe you can skill Wither and run them down, but very, very unlikely. Most of the time, 2 points in E is going to give you a lot of value from that spell. So he decided against spacing here. He did consider it, but he's got a ward. His lane's in a good spot. Malphite Graves, very little threat, so he decides to stay. And he's just poking down Malphite with E. Last hitting with Q, and here Malphite goes for a quick auto W trade, so he pops a Wither onto him, auto QE, and now Malphite's in a very tricky spot. So keeps pushing here. Karthus notices that Malphite's low, and Nasus is trying to keep him stuck in the lane. So he comes back here, pops E onto Malphite, chunks him down, and Malphite tries to recall here, but he gets an E off here. So some of you will notice that 4 minutes every game, you'll get your second cookie. So it's definitely something you can play around because he got his extra mana back from that cookie and is able to keep Malphite stuck in the lane here. So really good by him. And he's just pushing, trying to get the wave in for the dive. He tried to get the kill with the E here. I understand why he went for it. He's a little bit greedy. But I'd say just eating the wave is more of a guaranteed play here. Get it in, kill him with the Karthus. So this dive would have been a lot cleaner. But of course, Karthus shouldn't take 2 tower shots, so it's both of their bads. But he's still able to get the kill. It's just a 1-4-1. He executed, so we won't count that. But we can see a very different approach. So don't just default to sitting far back with E, warding level 1 and being safe. If your matchup is one that's not too tricky, especially levels 1, 2, 3, a champ like a Malphite, definitely you can push yourself more and get prio in those lanes. Next up, we have DK on the career server playing up against a Kennen. And even though Kennen is one of the best blind picks in the game right now, for top lane, Nasus actually does pretty well into him. So we're going to be watching how exactly he plays this matchup, and he's able to stabilize very nicely. So again, it's not going to be a super flashy level 3 solo kill, pretty much impossible unless the Kennen does something ridiculous, but we can see he's hitting the wave a lot with auto attacks, where he doesn't want to be giving Kennen hard push. You've probably heard me talk about it a lot now, where it's okay to give your opponent push, but if you give them really hard prio and you just sit here and do nothing but last hit, they're going to have a 3 minion gap over you when they're level 2 and zone you from the wave completely. So hitting the wave of autos when he can, near the bushes so he can use them to dodge Kennen autos, make it so he can't auto him anymore, and eating the Kennen without hitting the wave. So really good stuff by him, making sure he doesn't cook the wave and make it push out, where he can get poked really heavily or die to a gank. And again, when Kennen goes onto his side and trades onto him, he'll use an E and hit Kennen and maybe sometimes some of the melee creeps, but he's not dumping E on the entire wave and chasing Kennen onto his side of the lane. So just keeping it really stable, life stealing off the wave now that it's Crash and stacking his Q, and we can see already off to a good start in terms of his HP. Firstly Kennen, and Kennen goes onto him, so he dumps an E onto Kennen. So really good, 2 points in E, very consistent, especially against a range matchup. You need to be getting those 2 points in E. And again, stacking up and lifestealing. If Kennen plays aggressive onto his side, he'll drop an E, but he's making sure his E doesn't cook the entire wave. So quite standard stuff here, but still nice to see. He's got a big HP gap, has to respect this level 4, but trades an E for Kennen W. Definitely worthwhile. And now he's noticed Kennen's quite low. He's been taking a lot of minion aggro and Nasus E's, which is kind of another benefit, where if he walked up onto Kennen's side and E'd him, there'd be a big window where his E's on cooldown, where Kennen can trade onto him. But if Kennen's trading onto him when his E's up, he can drop E, and that coupled with the minion aggro, quite a lot of damage in that trade. So it creates him a lot of space, and now his wave is pushing out, so he's going to be looking to crash and get himself a recall. So Nasus is a champ we saw last game. He didn't base after wave 3. We don't really want to be basing early. You want to be basing for a full tier 2 boots, sometimes Sheen, but normally tier 2 boots if you can. And he gets a nice crash here, could base and walk back to lane and be in a great spot. He greeds a little bit, which I don't recommend doing. Kennen's got TP, and it's going to be hard to get this wave in time before Kennen gets back, but it's still fine. He greeds for an extra wave, probably get an item spike that he wanted, but here Kennen's able to pull the wave out, so it's not really worth it. Better for him to crash that earlier wave base, walk back and let the wave come back towards him, but still, he's even CS, even up a little bit and completely stabilized quite an annoying range matchup lane. For our final matchup, we have Dog Old 8, goated name by the way, playing up against a Jace on the Korean server. Now, I picked this one to showcase that there are going to be timings when you can pop your Ghost, pop your ulti, and run down and solo kill your opponent. But not only do you need to be patient, it will take a little bit before those opportunities arise, but also you need to stabilize the early game. If you play too aggressive, 1 to 5, and get down 20 CS or get killed, lose XP, you're not going to be able to punish him at later points in the lane. So we'll see exactly how he stabilizes this early lane, but we can see pretty standard. Walked in with the wave, watered the bush, eating the Jace whenever he can, and just queuing and hitting minions. Trying his best to stay high HP, not playing too aggressive, normally using his E on Jace when Jace tries to attack him. He's not the one running at Jace and committing his E like that. He's using it more as a retrading tool when Jace runs at him. He uses it on the wave sometimes to pick up CS, And you'll notice he went D-Shield in this game. Like I said before in the item section, the Korean Nasus players love their D-Shield a lot more. Could be because of the range top laners they play against are a lot better at the game, better at spacing and poking. But he feels like he can't win lane without it, so it makes sense. But I would recommend for the majority of the play base D-Ring, just poke down this Jace who's going to make a bunch of mistakes in the majority of games, and you might even be able to pick up a kill or receive a gank. But we can see just using his E on the wave and Jace as he can, and he's still pretty high CS. The wave is coming to him, so he's going to pick up the brunt of this and just trying to pick up as much farm and stacks as he can. Jace has pretty much used all his mana and HP trying to poke down this Nasus, he's tanking minions, and he's only up about 7 CS, so not a bad spot to be in whatsoever. So Jace decides to stay here, push in this wave, base, and we can see he picked up Chain Vest and Boots. So we talked about the build before, and it makes a lot of sense this game. I spawn into 3, Jace is not an ADC, but AD range champions. Makes a lot of sense. Solo AP Diana. Diana's not going to be focusing Nasus in these fights, most likely. So it's a really good pickup from him, I would say. For the majority of the players, Triforce will be better, but Iceborne is definitely great in a game like this, so if you do run into this type of team comp, it'll be a great game for you to try it. But we can see Jace TP'd back as well. Let the wave come back towards you, Eing the Jace in the wave if he can, as long as his E doesn't swap the push to go towards Jace. He doesn't mind too much if it hits the wave. In fact, it is good to use your E on Jace and the wave at the same time, because you want to thin the wave out. You don't want this massive stack wave to come in, or you can't do this, where he's blocking the casters from reaching tower. So not only can he farm most of them with his Q, but his wave also bunches up here, so it doesn't reset back to even. So good wave control by him. And what I was saying before, you do want your E to hit Jace and the wave at the same time. If the wave is big, you need to trim it. You need to thin it out a little bit so it's easier to freeze. But if the wave is relatively even, especially in the center of the lane, you want to make sure you're placing E's, like in the VOD we watched before, a Psychopathic top, where it's just hitting the opponent or maybe 1 or 2 minions tops. So another good E, poking them down. And I'm going to fast forward, I'll skip ahead a little bit. It's pretty much just the same thing up until the timing when he can punish. So skip ahead a couple minutes, but you didn't really miss much. So here, we can see he's got Chain Vest, Boots, not the scariest items in the world, but he's got 180 stacks. He is stacking up quite nicely, and his timing is going to come. So Jace poking him down now, playing really aggressive, starting to feel the pressure that he's only up about 7-6 CS. He needs to punish this hard scaling champion, and he makes his mistake here. And now that Nasus is strong, level 9, very shortly with Ghost and good stacks, and Chain Vest actually still level 8. Boom. As soon as Jace went in here, even though it looks good for the Jace, his popped his Phase Rush, and Nasus chucks his W on him straight away, because the Wither lasts a lot longer than the Phase Rush slow resist, so he's able to pop Ghost here as well, and completely reach him. So running this guy down here, Jace even ease him away and flashes, but Ghost and Wither way too strong, so he's able to run him down, and Jungler does ruin our good time, but he still picks up a nice solo kill onto the lane bully such as Jace. So really good lane from him. I would say Nasus is not the most exciting laner, but if you are the type of player that loves scaling up and being that raid boss, especially in the side lane later on, as long as you practice stabilizing your early game, you're going to be able to beat your lane regardless, because these timings will appear as long as you are even at that point. And one more thing I wanted to showcase before we move on to the mid game is how Doggy plays up against a Darius level 1. So you would assume he'd walk in with the wave, ward the bush level 1, but if Darius starts W, he can kill the ward, walk out of the bush, walk back in, you drop the minion aggro, and then run down this Nasus or walk behind the creeps and zone him. So instead of doing that, he stays here, he walks in, you can see he's not hitting the wave, he doesn't want to push, and now he knows Darius is in there, he comes out, and he actually skills W level 1. So Darius was only able to get 3 hits onto him, but you can see all 4 minions chase Darius, so now the wave is going to come back towards him quite nicely. So I thought that was quite cool to see, and we didn't really get to see more of this matchup because the jungler came and just completely ran him over, but the level 1 was quite impressive. Now we're going to be starting our review of the mid game, and we'll start with Psychopathic top. And as for this game state, we can see having a pretty good game. He's had some ganks done decently in his lane, Triforce, Swifties, and even 2 Moonplates. His build makes a lot of sense in this game, where they have 380 carries, 4 range champions. he needs as much mobility as he can get. So fight straight away, of course he's going to join it, but Nasus' main goal, of course, as we know, is a side laner. So straight back to side, his goal in the mid game, his value to the team, create as much side lane pressure as possible. And because he's so quick, he's able to catch up to the Smolder and make a pick onto him with Wither. Even though Smolder does have Swifties, that spell is so powerful, and he's able to keep him stuck there until Kha'Zix can join. So far so good. And even though Nasus can't really team fight, he's not horrible at it, not as bad as a champ like Yorick or Trundle, but he's still mainly going to be split pushing and creating as much side lane pressure as possible. But in this point, he is strong, but he's not fit enough where he can hit the tower in front of Smolder. So you have a couple options in this type of situation. You can either keep your opponent stuck here and rotate to a fight that looks good, a 5v4 team fight, where I'd say on Nasus, that's not really going to be the best play most of the time, unless your team's doing well. So in this game, he definitely could. If his team was playing well, he could keep Smolder stuck here and move to a dragon fight. That would work well. But if your team's doing a bit worse, you don't really want to be grouping up a team fighting as a 1.5 item Nasus. So in that case, if you don't want to be creating a team fight with your pressure, then you can just look to maintain pressure. So keep your opponent stuck here and punish mistakes. So either a fight that does look good appears and you create that, you get there first, or your opponent leaves so that you can break tower. Maybe he bases it or he TPs into a play, or maybe your team comes and ganks for you. So that's what's happening here. His team is ganking from top. They're able to get a nice pick onto Smolder, and now he's going to be maintaining this pressure as much as he can. So they get a pick onto his Kha'Zix, but now they take a bit of damage, so he sees an opportunity here. So he gets to the wave in before he makes his play, and now he's going to be looking to completely dive them. So pops W onto Jhin, but an anti-synergy there from the bot lane, and just beats their heads in. So out of mana now, but he wants to get this tier 2 down. So much damage to tier 2 with his Q, and even though he has lower mana, his Senna is doing great work here, so he's able to get a pick onto Smolder as well. So really blown the game wide open. You can see his team did gank for him, which helped him a lot in that situation. But right place, right time, of course, now he's in a great position to carry the game. So now heading back onto the map, really spiked at this point, 2.5 item Nasus, and it's very flexible, his next decision here. Dragon is spawning in 15, so he could rotate to this dragon and fight it, because even though he is a side laning champ, he is strong enough to carry a team fight. Or he can go top and make them respond. He has a lot of threat inside. If they don't answer me, I'm going to get the top inhib. So both options are very good. And he decides to go for split pushing here. So he goes in, and I really like the way he played this 1v1, where he ulti Q straight onto Varus. He doesn't know Varus doesn't have ulti. So here we can see by his movement, he's trying to dodge the Varus ulti. So runs through, trying to evade that Varus ulti. So pretty nice by him. Or maybe, who knows, he did know his ulti was down, he's just styling on him. Either way, some really nice movement. So now, creating as much pressure as possible to pull them away for a dragon. And if you're in this situation, it's really important, if your team is fighting on the other side, to maximize your pressure. You need to be going crazy, you need to hit the tower, hit somebody under it, and create as much pressure as possible to put pressure on them to respond. So he does just that, runs up W onto Jhin, massive damage at this point. And even though he didn't get the kill here, of course we can see with our God Vision, he could have walked up and got one extra auto, right? But I like that he backed out here. He's a 1k shutdown Nasus. There's no use risking your life for this one individual kill on this useless Jhin. So really smart by him, even though he does make the biggest mistake at the mid game here, and he gives it away. So he gets away here from the Jhin ulti, but he comes back to cheese. He felt confident his ulti was coming back up, but when you're in this situation, if you find yourself in his shoes where you're 1k shutty inside, you have to keep in mind your pressure that you're creating inside and you being on the map is more valuable to maintain that than risk it all for one kill or one tower. So he did well before, not risking it for the Jhin kill, but giving it to Smolder is actually a little bit worse. So now they have that 1k shutdown. But it's not just the 1k shutty that's an issue if you make this type of mistake. Now your whole team has to play the next couple minutes without your pressure. So your full diff time, then they have to wait for you to go all the way to side, clear this wave, clear the next, where you're not pressuring. So you're kind of relying on them not to make a game-losing mistake or get caught out while you're not pressuring and making people respond. But in this game, his whole team is playing well, so it's not going to matter at all. It's just something to keep in mind if you're ever in this situation also. Now heading back onto the map, a little bit greedy getting his Q stacks on the way, but you do have to be greedy on this champion, and I'm a big fan of his lane assignments. The next spawning objective that you want to play for is Baron, so he's going to be trying to create as much pressure bot as possible, and if nobody responds to me, I'm going to break the tier 2. If they do respond, I'm going to look to move to or TP into Baron. So really good decision here. Nobody responds in time, except Janna, but he doesn't care about her, and just gets down this tower and kites out. So really good here. Makes 3 people respond to him, and he still gets the tower. Of course, he just eats them at this point with 500 stacks. and he's going to be looking to do the same thing again, create bot pressure and rotate to a play or a fight. And here, a team fight is kind of breaking out. He manages to get a chunk onto Udyr and just bash him down using his phase rush quite well. And he's just really tanky at this point, really fit at this point in the game. 9 and 2 with 3 items. And now he's cutting back out. Could use a blast cone here to get back in, but overshoots it a little bit. And then, boom, play's done. And they got 3 picks, or 2.5, because Jin was dead earlier, and he's going to force Baron. So really good play by him, created as much pressure bottom as possible, split them up, made them respond to him, and then saw an opportunity to group. So he doesn't stay side the entire game. If it looks like a favorable fight for him, he will rotate after creating that pressure, and because of that, he was able to secure Baron for his team, and now they're in a really good spot to win the game. For our final game, we have our boy Doggy, and we're going to be reviewing how he plays this game out from behind. So if we take a look, 0-2 start, not looking good for him. He's got CD Boots Sheen, Chain Vest into Triforce Merc's Fate, so really far behind at this point, but he still manages to have an impact in this game. Now, don't get me wrong, he made some pretty bad plays as well. In the mid-game, he did get caught a couple times, but he did make some good plays and he was impactful, despite such a bad start. So we can see creating pressure top, and he's answered by Zeri. 1.5 item, by the way, really strong at this point, but he still manages to create some pressure. He's not feeling too scared, and you'll notice there, she just E'd forward to poke him. And very similar to when he versus Jace, as soon as that Jace hammer formed in, he went. So you have to pay close attention to your opponent's major spells, Lucian E, Zeri E, Camille E, whatever it may be, Jax Q. If they waste their major disengage tool, that's going to be more of an indication that you can pop your spells, run them down, and pick up a solo kill. So he did just that, really good by him, and then decided to base. Blitzcrank was fogging up, so really good start by him. Now, skipped ahead a little bit, you didn't miss much at all, he just got caught out a couple times, and I only want to show the points that will be productive, so hitting straight bottom with the goal to create as much pressure as possible before this Baron spawns, and Blitzcrank and Nidalee are here yet again. Jungle and support really dictate the pace of the game, especially in Korean solo queue. They are a huge driving force and just constantly making plays, but he is able to survive. So in terms of his build, I spawned building into Black Cleaver, but not very strong at this point, 1.5 items, so he just wants to pull Gnar away, the 2.5 item Gnar, or Zeri, and just create as much pressure as he can. So you can see he actually did pull Gnar away, and he TP'd in. And before we watch his TP, we're going to go back and see, with his vision, how does he know this is a good TP or not? So we can see straight away they go on to Brawl. Now, the reason this is a good TP, there's 2 reasons. He's already prepared, I guess there's 3. He's got a good ward, and they're going on Brawl, right? If they were going on Ashe here, or Viego even, and just instantly one-shot him, this is a bad TP. But Braum can buy so much time with shield, with ulti, he can just buy a lot of time, takes him so long to do any damage to him. Jin, Nidalee, they're not killing anything, so he has time to get here, and the Braum is still alive, so he's able to be here for this fight. And good target selection goes on the one with the Braum passive, and she does live, she flashes out, but still good selection, and even picks up a kill on the Gnar. So nice TP there, and he did get there first because he created pressure, made Gnar respond, so nice decision making all around. So a little bit greedy here for his top wave, probably wants Cleaver or something, and then he's going to be looking to do the same thing again, create the spot pressure for Baron, most likely. Now I wanted to showcase this sequence here because it shows a really good example of him playing flexible in the mid game. So of course, he wants to be bottom, he's 2-item Nasus, he wants to push this wave in, maybe even fight the Gnar, break the tower, and create pressure, but he doesn't have TP anymore. And especially in Korea, this is a region where early Barons are forced pretty much every single game. If he goes bottom here, and tries to catch this wave after Gnar's pushed it in, he's going to have to catch this wave, then this wave, then hit the tier 1. By the time he's even near tier 2, his whole team's dead and they've got Baron. They're going to force it straight away. So you can see he's hovering halfway between the lanes, hidden in Fog of War. If they look like they're going to play for Baron, he'll go up, which they do, which is why he is. If Gnar shows on bot wave, he'll answer Gnar instead. So really smart by him, especially him and Gnar don't have TP. So if Gnar's here and he has to answer, at least his team can 4v4. But he really didn't want to show bottom and have Gnar move, and they just start Baron, kill his team, get Baron, and the game's over. So really good flexibility, even though he knows what he wants to do. He knows what he'll lose if he tried to do it at this exact moment in the game. And that moment's going to change depending on the game you're in, the game state, the champions. So it's important to build on it. If you're versus a team Even if you're not playing in Korean solo queue where they force Barons, if you're up against a team that does Baron quickly, champs like Cassiopeia, Brand, Zyra running around, you should be more careful. But if you're up against like a Zed mid with a Jhin, and they have Lee Sin jungle, you probably don't need to worry about early Barons. So it mainly depends on the team comp, I would say, in the majority of games, and the how strong they are as well. But in Korea, it doesn't matter if they have 5 champs that suck at Baron. Baron is often fought around early, so we can see he comes here, and he's going to play front to back, very standard on Nasus, and just hit the guy that has Brom stacks on him. Really nice combo. So a bit of an overreach for his team fighting here. He's got the tank build with the Iceborne, but probably not as tanky as he feels. But good kill onto Na. And then he should have cut it up here if we want to nitpick. But I just like that he's here to begin with. If he was here hitting the spot tower, probably his team loses this fight without him, very likely. But they were able to make it extremely close. And now the last sequence of the game, pushing in bottom, creating that pressure. He has his TP now, so he's not as afraid of a fight happening without him. And even though the Snar's level 15 with 3 items, now he is Nasus. He has almost 500 stacks. He's feeling a lot more confident, especially with the Braum hovering him. So we'll see very shortly. He's going to take this fight. He's scaled up nicely. He's around 2.5 items here, building towards another tank item, doesn't matter. And waits for the Mega Gnar to expire. Sees Gnar on the golems and now goes for it. So pops Wither, auto Q, pops his ulti, Gnar jumps on his head, but just insta kills him. 500 stacks, way too strong. Kills Gnar, instantly TPs in here, doesn't waste time getting the tower or anything. Instantly TPs and helps his team force down the Baron. So really nice play by him, knowing his limitations in the side, even though he's behind in items, he knew he could beat Gnar there, and he's able to force Baron for his team as well. So game-winning play right there, and of course his team also played well, but I thought this was a good example of him making some pretty impactful plays, despite starting this game 0-2 and so far behind. Alright everyone, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. And one thing I want to clear up, especially for all my Nasus mains out there, this doesn't mean I'm not going to make the Nasus guide. I still have plans to make a full in-depth guide on the champion later on throughout the year, so look forward to that. And as usual, if you have any questions at all, feel free to let me know down below in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.